What's happening, guys? My name is Anthony and welcome to my F122 settings. Now, at the time of recording this, and actually should be the time of uploading, the game has just come out for everybody. So I'm sure that a lot of you guys are going to be looking for settings, and that's where I come in. So I'm going to be showing you guys my settings on the game. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first setting I'm going to be showing you guys is what assist that I use, and it's going to be pretty simple because I don't actually use any assists. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of you guys who do use assists. I will be making tutorials throughout the year on how to turn some of these off if you're looking to. And then next we'll move on to my time trial settings. Honestly, not really much to say about them. I pretty much just have everything off. But if you do want to improve, I highly recommend maybe using the rival telemetry mode or even your current lap telemetry mode. What this will actually do is if we go back here and start driving, you can see that as we get to a braking zone, it actually shows you a little line here that gets bigger. This is showing you the braking and where I'm actually turning in to the corner. This could be very helpful in learning where other people are turning in, where other people are braking, other than obviously the track guides that I will be uploading throughout the year as well. So yeah, if you're new to the game and you want to really practice in time trial where to turn in and stuff like that, I highly recommend using the telemetry mode in time trial. Okay, so now we move on to the big one that a lot of you guys are going to be looking for, and that's my camera settings. Now with my camera settings, this is what I've got here. Now I haven't actually started editing each individual car yet, so this is what I'm using for every single car. They will look a little bit different depending on what car you're using, so I highly recommend maybe using this as a base, and then you can go and edit each individual car to your personal liking. I don't actually have any TV pod offset camera settings because personally I just don't use this camera often enough to really make a set. And when it comes to cockpit, I've only really just brought the camera closer to the wheel. I don't plan on using cockpit often enough unless I switch to my ultra wide monitor, which is over there, or I get VR. That's the only times you're going to be seeing me using cockpit. And next off, we've got my on-screen display settings. Now there's a few options within these settings that I really recommend that you guys use. And the first one that I recommend you guys use is full track map. This is super important, especially if you do league races, but it's very important even if you do my team or you just generally do like GP mode or 5 lappers or something like that. What full track map will allow you to do is in qualifying, it will allow you to see where everyone is on the track so that you don't end up blocking anyone on their lap, and you can really position yourself in a good position when starting your own lap. And in the race, it allows you to keep tabs on the rivals around you when they go into pits. You can see where they come out, if they come out in traffic or if they don't come out in traffic. And then you can also see when you hop into the pits, how far away they are from you. And the second option within these settings that I highly recommend is the permanent session timer. This is more for qualifying than anything else, but what this setting actually does is it gives you the timer of how long is left in qualifying for the whole of qualifying instead of just the final 5 minutes. This will allow you to plan your qualifying laps a lot better. So I highly recommend turning on the permanent session timer. As for some of the more optional options, you have the virtual view mirror. I know a lot of people use this. I personally don't, just because I got used to it when I was playing F1 2019. That wasn't really an option. I think it came out in F1 2020. I'm not entirely sure, but I just didn't use it. I wasn't used to it, so I don't. But you guys can. It could be super helpful. I would recommend actually using this if you do use cockpit though, because it'll be a lot easier to see behind you. And then when it comes to the speedometer, I use kph for no other reason than I just like it more. And for my on-screen display settings, pretty much default. The only thing I've changed to my on-screen display settings is I've moved my track map, as you can see right here. Let me try and, there we go. So yeah, as you can see right here, this is where my track map is. You can see that my objectives kind of overshadow the track map, but I'm not really in a situation where that really matters. So I've got it there, and it's so that you guys in my videos can actually see the track map above me. Okay, so moving on to my force feedback settings and control settings. The first thing I want to show you guys is my generic settings. Very important for this. The reason for this is this option here. I actually use the hold option for the overtake ERS mode. The reason why I do this is because the amount of times when I had it on toggle that I would go into a corner and forget to turn my ERS off, and then I'd spin because obviously the car is using too much power. It's ridiculous the amount of times that I've left my ERS on for halfway through the lap and I've literally lost about 50% of ERS for no reason. It's ridiculous. And another thing is, when you're using hold, as soon as you press the button, the ERS is turning on, and then as soon as you lift off the button, the ERS is turning off, whereas with toggle, I believe that it's very minimal, but there is a slight delay in it. So it's just personal preference, but I like using hold because I feel like it gives me more control. And then moving on to my force feedback settings. Now, to give you guys context, I am using the Thrustmaster TX Servo Wheelbase, which is the equivalent to the Thrustmaster T300 RS. So if you're using a completely different wheel, even within the Thrustmaster lineup, you're probably going to want to use different settings to what I'm using. However, my settings for force feedback this year at this moment may surprise you. And the reason for that is because my force feedback settings are pretty much default. And the reason why they're default is because I'm actually trying to get used to the way that the car handles intended by Codemasters. However, as you guys can probably see by the title or look in the description, these are all my first set of settings. I will be updating my force feedback settings later on in the year once I found a set that really works for me. However, there are 3 options within these settings that you really want to consider changing, and that is the understeer enhance. You want to turn that on. Last year, I was speaking to a streamer who did not have this on, and I was watching his footage, and he'd be understeering every corner because he was turning the wheel too much. I told him to turn understeer on. Not only did his pace improve, but his consistency increased massively as well. And that's because the understeer enhance makes the wheel feel light as soon as the tires lose grip. This is very important for wheel users. If you don't use this, highly recommend turning it on. If you still don't like it, then fair enough, turn it off again. And then these 2 settings that you see here are pretty important, especially on PC, because on PC, you never really were able to change your wheel rotation within the game. For Xbox and PlayStation users, you guys are pretty much used to this, but for PC, you wasn't actually able to change your wheel settings in-game. I'm using 300 for F1 and F2 cars. I've been using that since, I believe, the ending half of F1 2020, used it throughout F1 2021, and I'm going to be using it throughout F1 22. And for the maximum wheel rotation for the supercars, I'm currently using 400, but I'm still looking for a good wheel rotation set. So if you guys find anything, make sure to hit me up in a comment. As for my calibration settings, I highly recommend, unless your wheel's broken and you really need to, don't use the steering calibrations for anything. Just keep it at 0. In terms of the throttle and brake linearity, saturation and dead zones, and the brakes ones, of course, personally, I don't use them in game because I actually have pedals that have software that allows me to change it there instead of changing it in game. The linearity, what this does is the higher you have this value, the less sensitive the beginning phase of the input will be compared to the ending phase. And the saturation is the complete opposite. The higher you have this number, the more sensitive the beginning phase of your input, whether it's throttle, brake, or turn-in, will be compared to the end half of the travel. And then yeah, when it comes to my button layouts, pretty much default, except for the fact that I actually use my upshift button for my clutch, and I use the number 3 on my open wheel for overtaking, and the number 9 for pausing the game. So yeah, other than that, everything else is pretty much default. And so for my audio settings, to be honest, audio settings is obviously very subjective. I highly recommend toying around with it yourself. I've got the music at 5 and I've got the master volume at 6 with everything else at 10. For the onboard mix, unless you're a commentator, I highly recommend using driver. There's 3 new onboard mix, so you have cinematic, broadcast and driver. Driver is going to give you the most realistic sounds, so I highly recommend using this onboard mix. For the speaker type, use headphones for obvious reasons, and for engineer ducking, don't really play around with it, so I just use a light. And I think what that does is it makes the rest of the game lower when your engineer is talking. For the audio simulation quality, now you may see this at ultra low and think, what the hell is he thinking? Why would you want ultra low audio simulation quality? The reason for this is because there's currently a bug on the game where when you're playing on a multiplayer, if you have it at high or ultra high, then it is really choppy, the audio. So currently got it at ultra low. Hopefully they come out with a patch to fix that, and then I'll probably put it back to high or ultra high. But for now, it's at ultra low. For my main commentator, David Crofty, you can use Alex Jakes. I will be using Alex throughout this year as well. Here are 2 important options for these settings if you play multiplayer a lot. Push to talk and mute by default. I highly recommend turning these on if you're not really sociable on the game, like I am. And then the last setting for me personally, this is more of a content creator's thing, is I've got the music type on theme so that I don't get any copyrights on my videos. But obviously, if you're not a content creator, feel free to check out the awesome soundtrack that is on the F122 game. Now, the last thing I'm going to be showing you guys is my graphical settings on PC. Sadly, if you're on Xbox or PlayStation, I don't think you can actually change these, but if you're on PC, you can. For my gamma adjustment, I've got it at 100. I think that's pretty much standard. Motion blur strength, if you use that, then you are very weird. So keep it at 0. And same with steering animation. Does anyone actually drive with steering animation off? I know James Baldwin did during F1 2020, I believe. But even he said that was a massive L. So keep it on, unless you're using cockpit view and you've got your actual wheel blocking the view so that you can't actually see that it's not moving. Just keep it on. Just keep it on. And for my video mode settings, I've got the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060, so that's why my settings are the way they are. If you have a worse graphics card, then you'll probably have worse settings, obviously. And if you have a better graphics card, then you'll probably have better settings, obviously. I've got a 144Hz monitor, so I'm using currently 119Hz with 120 frames maxed out. And then I have my anisotropic filtering, I'm pretty sure I said that right, at 4x, with my anti-aliasing at NVIDIA's DLSS. This allows me to get a little bit more frames with less power from the GPU, and I've got the mode set to quality with a sharpness of 55. And then for my advanced graphics setup, I've got it on custom. It's pretty much the high default preset. The only difference is I've changed my ambient population, I think I've said that right, probably butchered it, to HBAO plus rather than AMD. I don't actually know what this does, but considering that says AMD and I have an NVIDIA graphics card, I thought it probably makes sense to not use it. I don't know, because I don't really know what it does. Let me know in the comment section if you do. And obviously I've got ray tracing off because I've only got a 2060. Ray tracing cannot be handled with the computer that I've got right now. If you've got a better PC, then you can probably handle ray tracing. Okay then guys, so that is my F122 settings video. This is my first set. I'll probably update a lot of these settings maybe around December time, halfway through the game cycle, once I've updated all these settings and I feel more comfortable with what I have. You'll probably see some videos on the screen right about now, so check those out. Make sure to smash the like button if any of these settings helped you out. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.